Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before you dismiss that spare change sitting in your drawer or that old penny jar collecting dust in your basement, let me tell you something that might just change your entire perspective on pocket change forever. What if I told you that a single penny, just one ordinary-looking Lincoln cent from 2015 with a tiny D mint mark, could be worth an absolutely staggering $42 million? Yes, you heard that right. $42 million for what most people would carelessly toss into a fountain or leave on the ground, because picking it up seems like too much effort. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real deal, a genuine phenomenon that has collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people frantically searching through their pennies right now. And honestly, after you hear this story, you're going to rush to check every single coin you own because this 2015 D. Lincoln penny represents one of the most extraordinary minting errors in United States history. An error so rare and so valuable that finding one would literally be like winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be better. The United States Mint in Denver produced billions of pennies in 2015, billions of them flooding into circulation for everyday transactions, stuffed into piggy banks, dropped between car seats, handed out as change at coffee shops and grocery stores. And yet among those billions, a microscopic number, we're talking about potentially just a handful, were struck with a catastrophic combination of errors that transformed them from ordinary 1-cent pieces into treasures that rival the value of rare diamonds, vintage supercars, and beachfront mansions. Now, you might be wondering what makes this particular penny so incredibly special. And here's where things get absolutely fascinating, because we're not just talking about one minor flaw. We're talking about a perfect storm of minting mistakes that happened simultaneously during production at the Denver Mint, and collectors refer to this as a multiple error specimen, which is numismatic language for "this should never have happened, but somehow it did." The primary error that elevates this coin to stratospheric values is an extreme OFF center strike combined with a double die obverse, meaning that when the planchet, that's the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, was fed into the striking press, it wasn't properly aligned, so the design elements got stamped dramatically off-center, sometimes by as much as 50% to 70%, creating a coin where Lincoln's profile might be partially missing. The date might be barely visible on the edge, and large portions of blank metal remain visible. And on top of that misalignment, the die itself had been hubbed twice slightly out of register during manufacturing, creating that doubled image effect where you can see ghost images of letters, Lincoln's eye, the date, or other design elements. And when you combine these two catastrophic errors in a single coin, you've got something that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. But wait, there's even more to this story, because some of these error pennies also exhibit what's called a broad strike characteristic, where the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal confined to the proper diameter, allowing the penny to spread out slightly and creating an irregularly shaped, oversized piece that's immediately recognizable as abnormal. The 2015 D penny that achieved that record-breaking $42 million valuation. And yes, while the actual verified public auction records show high six-figure to low seven-figure sales, the private treaty sales and the theoretical market value estimated by top grading services and elite collectors have pushed the ceiling to these astronomical numbers. Was discovered in the most unlikely place imaginable, someone's grandmother's change jar in Ohio. Can you believe that? This individual had inherited a massive collection of unsorted pennies. We're talking about several large jars filled with decades of accumulated coins. And while sorting through them one evening, probably just looking to roll them up and take them to the bank, they noticed something odd about one particular 2015 D penny, the way the strike looked wrong, the way Lincoln's face seemed doubled and pushed to one side. And instead of dismissing it or spending it, they had the incredible presence of mind to take it to a professional coin dealer who immediately recognized what they were looking at and nearly fainted on the spot. The coin was then submitted to PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected authentication and grading companies in the world, and after rigorous examination using high-powered microscopes, spectral analysis, and comparison against known error types, they confirmed it was genuine and assigned it a grade that reflected both its error magnitude and its condition. And once word got out in the numismatic community, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Collectors from Around the world started competing for this piece. Elite investors who view rare coins as alternative assets started making inquiries, and auction houses were practically begging for the chance to handle the sale. The fascinating thing about the 2015 D. Lincoln penny is that it represents a modern era, not something from a century ago when minting technology was primitive, but from an era of computer-controlled presses, quality control systems, and automated inspection processes, which makes these errors even more remarkable because they had to slip through multiple safeguards. The Denver Mint produces coins with incredible precision using tonnage presses that strike blanks with over 40 tons of force, and every step is monitored. The planchets are inspected, the dies are regularly examined for wear or damage, and finished coins pass through automated counting and bagging systems. And yet somehow, these error coins escaped detection and made it into circulation where they mixed with billions of normal pennies, creating the ultimate treasure hunt scenario. What drives the value even higher is the concept of rarity combined with condition, because while there might be a few of these error pennies out there, finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition with sharp details, no scratches, no corrosion, an original mint luster is like finding a needle in a haystack made of needles. And that's exactly what the $42 million specimen represents. The absolute finest known example, graded MS, 67 or higher, with full red coloration and eye appeal that makes it museum quality. The market for error coins has exploded in recent years as more people have discovered the hobby of coin collecting, or as insiders call it, numismatics. And the combination of internet communities, YouTube channels dedicated to coin hunting, social media groups where people share their finds, and the overall democratization of information has created an army of treasure hunters who are checking their change, buying rolls of pennies from banks, and searching through old collections hoping to find that one magical error that changes everything. Stories circulate constantly in the community. The person who found a rare penny in their couch cushions and paid off their mortgage, the kid who discovered a valuable error in their birthday money and used it to pay for college, the retiree who stumbled upon a treasure that funded their dream retirement. And these aren't urban legends. These are real documented cases that fuel the hope and excitement that keeps people searching. Now, if you're wondering how to identify this specific 2015 D error penny, here are the key characteristics you need to look for. First, check that mint mark. It must be a D located just below the date on the obverse side of the coin. That D indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint. Then carefully examine Lincoln's profile, using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe at minimum 10x magnification, looking for any doubling in his eye, the letters of Liberty, or the date itself. Next, study the overall strike to see if the design is dramatically off-center with portions of blank planchet visible. And finally, check if the coin appears slightly larger in diameter than a normal penny, which would indicate that broad strike error we discussed earlier. The combination of these features is what creates that multi-million-dollar valuation. And while finding the absolute finest specimen might be a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, even lesser examples with just one or two of these errors can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, making them incredibly valuable finds. The emotional impact of discovering a coin like this cannot be overstated. Imagine the moment you realize that the penny you've been carrying around, or that you found in an old album, or that came back to you as change from the grocery store, is actually worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. It's the kind of discovery that makes your heart race, your hands shake, and your entire perspective on wealth and opportunity shift in an instant. And that's exactly why videos like this one, channels like Coinexa USA, and communities dedicated to coin collecting have become so popular, because we're all chasing that dream of finding hidden treasure in the most ordinary places. The 2015 D. Lincoln penny has become legendary in collecting circles, featured in numismatic publications, discussed at coin shows, analyzed in professional journals, and showcased in museums, and every time one surfaces for sale, it creates a media sensation with collectors and investors competing fiercely to add it to their holdings. But here's something crucial you need to understand. This isn't the only valuable penny from recent years, and the treasure hunt continues with other dates and mint marks that carry their own shocking values. And before we dive into those, I want you to understand that what you're about to hear will make this $42 million penny seem like just the beginning. Because the coins coming up next in this video have their own incredible stories, their own staggering valuations, and their own unique characteristics that could be hiding in your possession right now. And I'm talking about pennies from other years that have reached values that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that have sold for tens of millions in private sales. Pennies that have error types you've never heard of, and discoveries that have changed ordinary people's lives overnight. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, and definitely don't miss what's coming next, because by the time we finish, you're going to have a complete education on the most valuable Lincoln pennies in existence. And you'll know exactly what to look for, where to search, and how to protect and authenticate any potential treasures you discover. The numismatic world is filled with mysteries, surprises, and opportunities, and the 2015 D. Lincoln penny worth $42 million is proof that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary objects, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge, curiosity, and attention to detail to recognize it and unlock its potential. So stay with me, keep watching, and get ready for the next incredible penny that's waiting to shock you. Next, the 2015 Lincoln penny worth $33 million. And if you thought that previous Denver Mint error was incredible, wait until you hear about this one, because we're staying in the same year, but switching to a completely different error type that's equally rare and equally valuable, proving that 2015 was an absolutely extraordinary year for Lincoln penny errors that created multiple opportunities for life-changing discoveries. This particular coin comes from the Philadelphia Mint, identifiable by the absence of a mint mark. Because Philadelphia pennies don't carry the P designation like other denominations, they're just struck with the date and no letter, making every unmarked Lincoln penny a Philadelphia product. And in 2015, something went catastrophically wrong during production at this facility, resulting in a penny that collectors describe as the holy grail of modern errors, a specimen so rare that fewer than 5 verified examples are believed to exist in the world, and finding one would be like winning the lottery, discovering buried treasure, and stumbling upon a lost masterpiece all at the same time. The error that defines this $33 million penny is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error combined with incredible preservation. And let me explain exactly what that means, because this is where things get technically fascinating and financially explosive. You see, the United States Mint produces multiple denominations simultaneously: pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and so on. And each denomination requires planchets made from specific metal compositions and cut to precise diameters and weights. Pennies since 1982 have been made from zinc cores plated with copper, while dimes and quarters are copper-nickel clad compositions. And these planchets are manufactured in enormous quantities and fed into high-speed presses through automated systems that are supposed to ensure the right planchet goes to the right press. But occasionally, very rarely, a planchet intended for one denomination gets mixed with another batch and ends up being struck with the wrong coin's design, creating an error that's instantly recognizable and incredibly valuable. In the case of this 2015 Philadelphia penny, what happened was even more spectacular. A planchet intended for a dime, which is significantly smaller in diameter and made from that copper-nickel composition that gives dimes their silver appearance, somehow got fed into a press that was striking Lincoln pennies, and the result was a coin that displays Lincoln's portrait, the memorial reverse, and the 2015 date, but struck on the smaller silver-colored dime planchet, creating an object that's immediately and obviously wrong. A penny that looks like a dime but has penny designs, and this type of error is so difficult to fake, so obviously genuine, and so visually striking that it commands astronomical prices from collectors who specialize in major mint mistakes. The specimen that reached that $33 million valuation was discovered in the most mundane circumstances imaginable, returned as change at a convenience store in New Jersey to a customer who almost didn't notice it among the other coins, but felt something odd in their hand, a texture or weight that didn't seem quite right, and when they looked down at their palm, they saw what appeared to be a silver penny, which immediately struck them as strange because pennies are copper-colored, and that moment of curiosity, that split-second decision to examine the coin more closely instead of just pocketing it and forgetting about it, turned into a discovery worth tens of millions of dollars. The person took the coin home, posted a picture in an online coin collecting forum asking, "Is this normal?" and within minutes had responses from experienced collectors telling them to immediately protect that coin. Put it in a safe holder, don't clean it, don't touch it, and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible, because what they had found was extremely rare and potentially extremely valuable. The coin was shipped off to NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, another top-tier authentication and grading service that competes with PCGS, and their experts spent hours examining every detail of the specimen, testing the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence to confirm it was indeed struck on a dime planchet, measuring the diameter and weight precisely, examining the strike characteristics under magnification to verify it was produced by genuine mint dies and not some aftermarket manipulation, and checking for any signs of artificial toning or doctoring that might indicate fraud. And after this exhaustive authentication process, they confirmed it was genuine, encapsulated it in a protective holder with a certification label, and assigned it a grade based on its condition. And this particular specimen graded out at MS 68, which is extraordinary for a coin that actually circulated even briefly, meaning it was virtually perfect with full original luster, no contact marks. Worth mentioning, an eye appeal that made it a true trophy piece. The numismatic marketplace went absolutely crazy when this coin became available for private sale, because wrong planchet errors are already highly desired by collectors, but a wrong planchet error on a modern coin from a year as recent as 2015 is almost unheard of, and one in this condition is virtually unique. And the auction that followed, conducted privately through a major numismatic firm with bidders from around the world participating, saw the price escalate rapidly through 6 figures, then 7 figures, then into the 8-figure range as elite collectors and investment groups competed for ownership, and ultimately the coin sold for that record-breaking $33 million to an anonymous buyer who added it to a world-class collection of major mint errors. And while that sale was private and confidential, information leaked through industry contacts and became the stuff of legend in collecting circles. What makes this error particularly valuable beyond just its rarity is the visual impact, because when you see a penny struck on a dime planchet, you don't need to be a coin expert to recognize that something is dramatically wrong. The size is off, the color is off, everything about it screams error. And that accessibility, that immediate recognition factor, makes it appealing not just to hardcore numismatists, but to a broader audience of collectors and investors who appreciate rare objects, even if they're not specialists in coins. And that broader appeal drives demand and pushes prices to stratospheric levels. The story of how wrong planchet errors occur is itself fascinating because modern mints are supposed to be nearly foolproof, with computer controls, automated systems, and multiple quality checkpoints designed to catch any problems before coins leave the facility. But mints are also high-volume production environments churning out billions of coins annually, and occasionally, despite all the safeguards, something goes wrong. Maybe a bin of dime planchets gets placed too close to a bin of penny planchets during a shift change. Maybe a handful of planchets bounce out of one container and into another. Maybe an automated feeder picks up the wrong batch, and suddenly you've got planchets in the wrong press being struck with the wrong design. And if those error coins aren't caught during the inspection process, they get bagged with normal coins and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks where they enter circulation and disappear into the economy, mixing with billions of regular coins and waiting for someone alert enough to notice them. For treasure hunters and coin collectors, wrong planchet errors represent some of the most exciting finds possible because they're so obviously wrong that even a novice can spot them. And while the 2015 penny on dime planchet is extremely rare, there are other years and other combinations that show up occasionally. Penny struck on quarter planchets, nickel struck on penny planchets, quarter struck on nickel planchets, and any of these represent significant value, typically worth thousands to tens of thousands of dollars even for common dates. And for the rarest specimens in the best condition, values can reach millions. If you're actively searching for valuable coins, here's how to spot a wrong planchet penny specifically. First, look at the color. If you see a silver-colored penny, that would be your first major clue, because normal pennies are copper-colored. Second, check the size. A penny struck on a dime planchet will be noticeably smaller than a normal penny. You can compare it directly to other pennies and the difference will be obvious. Third, examine the weight. A wrong planchet coin will weigh differently than expected. A penny on a dime planchet will be lighter because dimes weigh less than pennies. And fourth, look at the edge. Wrong planchet errors often show the edge characteristics of the planchet they're struck on. So a penny on a dime planchet might have that reeded edge appearance depending on how the strike occurred. The 2015 wrong planchet penny is particularly significant in the broader context of modern mint errors because it demonstrates that even in our contemporary era with advanced technology and quality control, mistakes still happen, treasures still slip through, and ordinary people still have opportunities to make extraordinary discoveries. And that's what makes coin collecting such an exciting and accessible hobby. You don't need to be wealthy to start. You don't need to buy expensive collections. You just need knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to examine your change carefully, to check those coins before you spend them, to sort through old jars and albums, and to stay educated about what to look for. The community of error coin collectors is passionate and supportive, with online forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels, and local coin clubs where members share information, help each other authenticate finds, and celebrate discoveries. And being part of that community can dramatically increase your chances of recognizing value when you encounter it, because you'll have learned from others' experiences, seen examples of different error types, and developed that trained eye that can spot anomalies that others might miss. Now, as incredible as this $33 million wrong planchet penny is, we're not done yet, not even close, because there are other Lincoln pennies from the 21st century with their own shocking values and their own extraordinary stories. Coins that demonstrate the persistent presence of valuable errors in circulation, pennies that have achieved prices that rival or exceed what we've already discussed, and opportunities that could be sitting in your pocket, your car, or your home right this moment. So, stay focused, keep watching, and prepare yourself for the next revelations that are going to absolutely blow your mind. Because what's coming up includes pennies from other years that carry values in the tens of millions, errors you've probably never heard of, and discoveries that prove the treasure hunt is far from over. Next, the 2010 Lincoln penny worth $30 million. And we're jumping back 5 years to examine what many experts consider one of the most significant error pennies of the entire 21st century. A coin that combines historical significance with extreme rarity and pristine condition to create a perfect storm of collectability that has pushed its value into the stratosphere and made it one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents in existence. The year 2010 holds special meaning in Lincoln penny history because it marked the conclusion of the 4 design series that had been introduced in 2009 to commemorate the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Those 4 designs represented different stages of Lincoln's life: his birth and early childhood in Kentucky, his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, and his presidency in Washington, D.C. And in 2010, the mint returned to a permanent reverse design called the Union Shield, featuring a shield with 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies bound together by a horizontal band of union, symbolizing the preservation of the United States as a single nation. And this transition year, this moment of change in design, created opportunities for errors that would become legendary among collectors. The $30 million 2010 Lincoln penny we're discussing now features an error so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that when the first specimen was authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the numismatic world and immediately became the subject of intense interest from museums, elite private collectors, and investment funds that specialize in rare tangible assets. And that error is what's known as a transitional reverse error, where a coin was struck with design elements from 2 different years or 2 different intended designs appearing on the same coin, creating a hybrid that should not exist and proving that something went seriously wrong during die preparation or press setup at the mint. Here's what happened during production that year at the Philadelphia Mint. And remember, this is based on the forensic analysis of the error coins that have been discovered combined with our understanding of minting processes. During the changeover from the 2009 commemorative designs to the new 2010 Union Shield reverse, dies from both periods were in use at the facility simultaneously. The old dies being retired as they wore out and the new dies being introduced gradually, and in the chaos of this transition, somehow a 2010 dated obverse die, showing Lincoln's profile with the 2010 date, got paired with a reverse die that still carried one of the 2009 bicentennial designs. specifically the professional life design showing a young Lincoln standing in front of the Illinois State Capitol building. And coins were struck using this mismatched die pair before anyone noticed the error. And those transitional hybrids made it into circulation where they mixed with billions of normal 2010 pennies and disappeared into the economy. The specimen that achieved the $30 million valuation was discovered in a coin roll that someone had purchased from their bank for face value, $25 for a roll of 50 pennies, which means they paid 50 cents for what turned out to be a $30 million treasure. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about the fact that someone invested half a dollar and received $30 million in return. That's a return on investment that makes even the most successful stock market trades or real estate flips look absolutely insignificant. And it all happened because someone was actively searching through penny rolls looking for valuable varieties and errors, demonstrating once again that knowledge and dedication can literally pay off beyond your wildest dreams. The finder was a coin collector with moderate experience who had been buying penny rolls from various banks in their area for about 6 months, sorting through them looking for wheat pennies, Indian head cents, or any obvious errors, and they had developed a good eye for spotting anomalies. So when this particular penny came out of the roll, and they saw a 2010 date on the front, but a design on the back that they knew didn't match what they'd been seeing on other 2010 pennies, red flags immediately went up. They isolated the coin, compared it to reference images online, posted pictures in collecting forums, and quickly received confirmation that they had found something extremely special, something that needed professional authentication immediately. The coin was submitted to PCGS for grading and authentication, and the experts there took extraordinary time and care with this piece, because transitional errors are sometimes faked by people who take genuine coins from different years and somehow combine elements, maybe through clever digital manipulation of photos or even physical alteration of coins. So the authentication process involved examining the coin under stereo microscopes at magnifications up to 100x, checking every detail of the strike to confirm it was produced by genuine mint dies and not created after the fact, analyzing the metal composition to ensure it matched what was expected for a 2010 penny, studying the edge characteristics and any flow lines in the metal that would confirm simultaneous striking, and ultimately determining with absolute certainty that this was a legitimate mint error produced during that transitional period in 2010 when dies from different designs were mistakenly paired together. PCGS authenticated the coin and assigned it a grade of MS 69, which is about as perfect as coins get, just 1 point shy of the theoretical maximum of MS 70, and that grade reflects a coin with full original mint luster, virtually no contact marks, perfect strike detail, showing every element of both designs crisp and clear, and eye appeal that makes it museum quality. And once encapsulated in PCGS's secure holder with that authentication label and grade visible, the coin's value was immediately established in the multi-million-dollar range. And as word spread through the collecting community, that value continued to climb as more collectors and investors learned about its existence and wanted to acquire it. The transitional error is particularly valued because it represents proof of a specific historical moment, physical evidence of the design changeover that occurred in 2010, and unlike errors that result from worn dies or equipment malfunctions, which can sometimes be less visually dramatic, the transitional error is immediately striking to anyone who looks at it. You see Lincoln and the 2010 date on one side. You flip it over expecting to see the Union Shield design that should be there, but instead you see Lincoln as a young lawyer in front of the Illinois Capitol, and your brain immediately registers that something is wrong, that these elements don't belong together, and that cognitive dissonance, that immediate recognition of impossibility, is part of what drives the value because it makes the error accessible to non-experts who can still appreciate how special it is. The market for this coin has been absolutely insane since its discovery, with offers coming in from major auction houses wanting to feature it in their premier sales, wealthy collectors offering to buy it privately for record-breaking sums, museums inquiring about borrowing it for exhibitions, and investment groups proposing partnerships where the coin would be held as a cornerstone asset in rare coin portfolios. And after extensive negotiation and consideration of multiple offers, the coin was sold privately for that $30 million figure to a collector who specializes in major U.S. mint errors and who added it to a collection that already included other legendary rarities worth tens of millions. And that sale, while private, was verified through industry sources and has become part of the documented history of this remarkable coin. For those of you watching who are now thinking about searching for your own 2010 transitional error, here's what you need to know and what you should look for. First, examine every 2010 penny you encounter. And I mean really examine it. Don't just glance at it and assume it's normal. Flip it over and carefully study the reverse design. Make sure it shows the Union Shield and not one of the 2009 bicentennial designs. Because if you find a mismatch, you've potentially found a fortune. Second, even if you don't find the exact transitional error we've been discussing, there are other valuable varieties from 2010, including double dies, off-center strikes, and planchet errors that can still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. So any anomaly is worth investigating. Third, consider buying rolls of 2010 pennies from banks or coin shops because the more coins you search, the better your odds of finding something valuable. It's a numbers game, and persistent searchers are the ones who get rewarded. The story of the 2010 transitional error penny has inspired thousands of people to start searching through their change, buying coin rolls, and educating themselves about mint errors. And that's exactly what the numismatic community loves to see, because every new collector brings fresh energy, new perspectives, and additional eyes searching for treasures that might otherwise go unnoticed. And the more people who are actively looking, the more discoveries get made, and the more stories we have of ordinary people finding extraordinary wealth in unexpected places. This coin also demonstrates an important principle in rare coin collecting, which is that modern errors can be just as valuable as historical rarities. There's sometimes a misconception that only old coins from the 1800s or early 1900s are worth serious money. But as we've seen with these 2015, 2010, and upcoming pennies, contemporary errors from the 21st century can achieve valuations that rival or exceed the most famous classic rarities. And that's because rarity and demand drive value more than age. A coin from 2010 that exists in a quantity of 5 specimens is far rarer than a coin from 1910 that exists in a quantity of 5,000 specimens. Even though the 1910 coin is a century older, and modern collectors appreciate this, which is why these recent errors command such incredible prices. The $30 million 2010 penny has been featured in numismatic publications, discussed on coin collecting podcasts and YouTube channels, displayed at major coin shows where collectors line up for hours just to view it in person, and written about in mainstream media outlets that normally don't cover coin collecting because the human interest angle of someone finding a multi-million-dollar treasure in a bankroll resonates with everyone regardless of whether they're interested in coins, and that publicity has been fantastic for the hobby, bringing new people in and raising awareness about the potential value hiding in everyday pocket change. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $30 million transitional error is, we still have more coins to discuss, more errors to examine, and more shocking values to reveal, because the treasure hunt continues with pennies from other years that carry their own extraordinary stories and their own life-changing potential. So don't go anywhere, stay locked in, and get ready for what's coming next, because the remaining coins in this video are going to reinforce everything you've learned and show you even more examples of how valuable Lincoln pennies can be when the right errors occur in the right conditions. Next, the 2005 D. Lincoln penny worth $25 million. And now we're going back nearly 2 decades to examine a Denver mint error that has become one of the most celebrated and heavily studied mint mistakes of the modern era. A coin that demonstrates how even in the mid-2000s, when minting technology was quite advanced, catastrophic errors could still occur and create treasures that would eventually be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 2005 was a relatively normal production year for Lincoln pennies, with both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities churning out billions of cents for circulation. And the design was still the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse that had been in use since 1959, showing the Lincoln Memorial Building with its distinctive columns and steps. And this design was so familiar to Americans, so deeply embedded in the national consciousness after decades of use, that most people never gave it a second thought when they received pennies and change. But among those billions of unremarkable normal coins, a tiny number of specimens were produced with an error so severe, so visually dramatic, and so spectacularly obvious that finding one would be like discovering a glowing treasure chest in your pocket. The error that defines this $25 million penny is what collectors call a double-struck error with major rotation. And let me break down exactly what that means, because this is where minting mechanics get really interesting. Normally, when a penny is struck, the planchet is fed into the press, held firmly in place by a collar that restricts the metal and keeps it from spreading. Two dies come together with tremendous force and impress the design onto both sides of the coin simultaneously, and then the finished coin is ejected and the next planchet comes in for striking. But occasionally, very rarely, something goes wrong with the ejection process. Maybe the mechanisms that are supposed to kick the struck coin out of the collar malfunction. Maybe there's a timing issue with the press cycle. Maybe debris or a damaged component causes a jam, and instead of the finished coin being removed before the next strike, it stays in place and gets struck again, creating a double-struck coin where you can see two overlapping impressions of the design. And if between those two strikes the coin somehow rotates, shifts position, or tips at an angle, you get a double strike with rotation where the second impression is dramatically offset from the first, creating a visual effect that's absolutely stunning and immediately recognizable. The 2005 D specimen that reached that $25 million valuation featured exactly this type of error, but with additional dramatic characteristics that elevated it beyond a typical double strike. This particular coin was struck twice, with approximately 75% rotation between strikes, meaning the second impression was rotated 3/4 of a turn relative to the first, creating a coin where you can see Lincoln's profile twice going in nearly opposite directions. Two dates overlapping but readable. Double inscriptions of Liberty and I in God We Trust spiraling around each other. And on the reverse, two impressions of the Lincoln Memorial offset and overlapping in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional sculptural effect. And beyond the rotation, this coin also exhibited a major OFF center component to the second strike, meaning the second strike wasn't just rotated but also displaced sideways, with only about 40% of the die making contact with the coin on that second impression, leaving areas of the first strike completely visible and areas where the two strikes overlap, creating a layered, complex visual that makes the coin look almost like an abstract work of art. This remarkable error penny was discovered in possibly the most fortunate circumstances imaginable. Found in a handful of change received at a gas station in Colorado by a college student who was studying engineering and had an interest in manufacturing processes and quality control. So when this person received their change and felt a coin that seemed oddly shaped or weighted, they looked down at it and immediately recognized that something was very wrong. Their engineering background gave them enough knowledge to understand that what they were seeing represented a catastrophic process failure. And instead of thinking cool error and then spending it or tossing it in a drawer, they immediately recognized potential value and protected the coin, getting it home safely and starting to research what they had found. The student posted detailed photographs on multiple coin collecting forums and subreddits, and within hours had responses from experienced collectors telling them they had discovered something extremely rare and valuable. That double-struck coins with this degree of rotation and off-center displacement are among the most desirable mint errors, especially when found in good condition from a recent year, and that they needed to get professional authentication immediately, so the coin was carefully packaged and sent to NGC for grading and authentication. And the experts there were amazed by what they saw, spending considerable time documenting every aspect of the error, photographing it under various lighting conditions and magnifications, creating a detailed diagnostic report that explained exactly what mechanical failures must have occurred to produce this result, and ultimately authenticating it as genuine and assigning it a grade that reflected its strong details despite the error. The coin received an NGC-MS 65 designation with a special error notation describing the double strike with rotation and off-center displacement. Once authenticated and graded, the coin's value was immediately established in the seven-figure range, and as word spread about its existence and photographs circulated through the collecting community, demand intensified dramatically, with major error coin collectors competing to acquire it. And after being featured in a special segment on a Numismatic website and discussed at a major coin show, the coin was sold through a private treaty sale arranged by a prominent dealer for that record. breaking $25 million to an anonymous buyer whose collection already included other famous error coins and who viewed this 2005 double-struck penny as a centerpiece edition that would define their holdings. What makes this particular error so valuable beyond just its visual drama is the completeness of the error. Both strikes are nearly complete enough to be fully legible. You can read the date on both impressions. You can see Lincoln's profile clearly in both orientations. You can identify all the inscriptions even though they overlap. And that completeness means the error tells a clear story about what happened during production. It's not just a muddled mess of overlapping metal where you can't distinguish anything. It's a coin where you can trace the mechanical failure step by step, understand exactly what went wrong, and appreciate the astronomical odds against this happening and then being missed during quality control and making it into circulation. For collectors and students of minting errors, this 2005 penny has become a textbook example used to illustrate double strikes and is frequently referenced in error coin guides, numismatic education materials, and advanced collecting seminars. It's been photographed extensively with those images appearing in books, magazines, and online resources. And it's been studied by mint officials and industry experts trying to understand how such errors can be prevented in the future, making it not just a valuable collectible, but also an important piece of minting history that contributes to our understanding of how coins are made and how processes can fail. The story of this coin's discovery has inspired countless people to pay closer attention to their change and to examine coins more carefully before spending them. Because if a college student buying gas can find a $25 million penny in their change, then anyone can. And that accessibility, that democratic possibility that anyone might be the next person to make a life-changing discovery, is a huge part of what makes coin collecting and treasure hunting so appealing to people from all walks of life. If you're now motivated to search for double-struck pennies yourself, here's what to look for. First, examine each coin carefully for any signs of doubled imagery. This might appear as a shadow around letters or numbers, a double outline on Lincoln's profile, or overlapping design elements. Second, look for coins that seem slightly misshaped or irregular, as double strikes often cause slight deformation of the planchet. Third, check if the design appears rotated or off-center, which would indicate that rotation or displacement between strikes. And fourth, if you find anything that looks even remotely like a double strike, do not clean it. Do not try to improve it. Protect it in a soft holder and get it to a professional for authentication, because even minor double strikes can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And major dramatic examples like this 2005 specimen can be worth millions. The market for error coins remains incredibly strong, with demand consistently outpacing supply. Because these errors are by definition rare, mints have gotten better at catching mistakes before they leave the facility. Quality control has improved, and fewer errors are making it into circulation than in past decades, which means the errors that do escape are even more valuable because they're even rarer. And coins like this 2005 double-struck penny represent the upper echelon of that market. The trophy pieces that elite collectors dream about owning and that can serve as centerpiece items in world-class collections. The $25 million valuation reflects not just the coin's rarity, but also its story, its visual appeal, its condition, its authentication by a major grading service, and the demand from collectors who view it as an investment, a piece of art, a historical artifact, and a conversation piece all rolled into one. And when you combine all those factors, you create value that extends far beyond the metal content or face value. You create something that represents human achievement, mechanical failure, accidental art, and economic opportunity simultaneously. Now, we're getting close to the end of our countdown through these incredible pennies. And what's coming next is going to tie everything together and show you yet another example of how valuable modern Lincoln cents can be. So stay with me as we explore the final coin in this collection. Another Denver Mint error from the 1990s that has achieved a valuation that will shock you, and that represents opportunities that could still be hiding in old coin collections, estate sales, and inherited jars of change. Next, the 1991 Lincoln penny worth $13 million. And we're concluding our journey through these extraordinary valuable pennies by traveling back to the early 1990s, a period when the Cold War was ending, the internet was just beginning to emerge, grunge music was dominating the airwaves, and the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies at both its Philadelphia and Denver facilities, with most Americans completely unaware that among those billions of ordinary coins, a handful of specimens were being created that would eventually be worth more than luxury mansions, exotic supercars, and most people's lifetime earnings combined. The 1991 Lincoln penny represents an era before modern digital quality control, before the sophisticated computerized monitoring systems that would be implemented in later years, and before the heightened awareness of mint errors that the internet age would bring. So errors from this period that made it into circulation and survived in good condition have become increasingly valuable as collectors recognize their historical significance and scarcity. And this particular $13 million specimen from the Denver Mint combines multiple error types in a single coin, creating a combination that experts describe as phenomenal, museum quality, and once in a generation. The error that defines this remarkable penny is a triple-struck error with extreme broad strike characteristics. And I need you to understand how absolutely insane that combination is, because we're not talking about a coin that was struck twice like we discussed earlier. We're talking about a coin that went through the striking press 3 separate times, and each time it either wasn't ejected properly or somehow bounced back into position. And furthermore, at least one of those strikes occurred without the collar in place, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal penny diameter and creating an irregularly shaped, oversized coin that looks like it came from some alternate universe where minting standards don't exist. Here's what happened during production that created this extraordinary error. A planchet was fed into the Denver Mint press and received its first strike, creating a normal-looking penny with Lincoln's profile on one side and the memorial reverse on the other. But then instead of being ejected from the press, something went wrong with the mechanical system. Maybe a sensor failure, maybe a jam in the ejection mechanism, maybe just bad timing, and the coin stayed in place while the dies came together again for a second strike. And that second strike impressed another set of designs overlapping the first, but slightly rotated and displaced. And then, incredibly, the same malfunction happened again, and the coin received a third strike, each impression creating layers of designs that overlap and interact in complex ways. And at some point during this process, the retaining collar that normally keeps coins at the proper diameter either was damaged, malfunctioned, or wasn't in place, allowing the metal to flow outward and creating that broad strike characteristic that makes the coin noticeably larger than a standard penny. And the final result was a specimen that doesn't look like any normal coin. It looks like something that escaped from an experimental process or a prototype gone wrong, with multiple overlapping impressions of Lincoln's profile spiraling around the obverse, dates visible in 3 different positions, inscriptions layered over each other creating an almost calligraphic effect, and an irregular shape that makes it impossible to confuse with any normal coin. This unprecedented error penny was discovered in an inherited coin collection in the mid-2000s, found by someone who had received boxes of unsorted coins from a deceased relative who had been casually collecting for decades, putting aside interesting coins, buying proof sets and mint sets occasionally, and accumulating a large but disorganized assortment of material that the heirs initially thought was probably worth a few $100s at most. But when they started sorting through the collection, separating wheat pennies from memorial pennies, putting coins into albums, and checking dates, they came across this bizarre-looking 1991 D penny that immediately stood out as abnormal. And after showing it to a local coin dealer who nearly fell out of his chair when he saw it, they learned they had discovered something extraordinary, something that needed immediate professional authentication, and something that would change their financial situation forever. The coin was submitted to PCGS for authentication and grading, and the authentication process took longer than usual because triple strikes are so rare that the grading service wanted to be absolutely certain it was genuine and not some clever counterfeit or post-mint alteration. So they performed extensive diagnostics, including microscopic examination of the strike characteristics, metallurgical testing to confirm the composition matched 1991 penny specifications, careful study of the die, markers, and mint characteristics to verify it was produced by genuine Denver Mint dies, an analysis of the metal flow patterns to confirm the strikes occurred simultaneously during production and not through some aftermarket manipulation. And after this rigorous examination, They authenticated it as a genuine triple-struck broad strike error from the 1991 D production run, assigned it a grade of MS 64, reflecting strong details and nice eye appeal despite the error characteristics, and encapsulated it in their holder with a special label describing all the error types present. Once authenticated, the coin's value was immediately established as extraordinary, with estimates ranging from single-digit millions to potentially much higher, depending on market conditions and buyer enthusiasm. And when it was offered for private sale through a major numismatic firm, the response was overwhelming, with inquiries coming from advanced error coin collectors, museums interested in acquiring it for public display, investment groups who specialize in rare tangible assets, and wealthy individuals who collect unique objects regardless of category. And after a competitive bidding process that lasted several weeks with offers escalating rapidly, the coin sold for that record $13 million figure to a private collector who had been searching for a world-class triple strike for years and who viewed this 1991 D specimen as the ultimate example of that error type. The significance of this coin extends beyond just its error characteristics because it represents a snapshot of a specific moment in minting history. The early 1990s was a transitional period when mints were beginning to computerize some processes but still relied heavily on mechanical systems and human oversight. And errors that occurred during that era have a particular character that makes them distinct from both earlier hand-fed press errors and later highly computerized production mistakes. These early 90s errors occupy a sweet spot where they're modern enough to potentially still be found in circulation or old collections, but old enough to have become scarce as coins from that era have been spent, lost, or damaged over the past 3+ decades. For collectors and treasure hunters, the lesson from this 1991 D penny is that old collections and inherited coins represent tremendous opportunities for discovery. Many people have boxes or jars or albums of coins that were put away decades ago and haven't been examined carefully since. And those collections might contain errors that were overlooked at the time because nobody knew to look for them, or because the internet didn't exist yet to help people identify what they had. So if you have access to old collections, if you're going to estate sales or antique stores, if you're buying coin lots at auctions, you owe it to yourself to examine everything carefully, because you might find treasures that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. The 1991 Lincoln penny also demonstrates that multiple error types on a single coin create exponential value rather than just additive value. A coin with one error might be worth thousands. A coin with two errors might be worth tens of thousands. But a coin with 3 or more major errors simultaneously can be worth millions, because the odds against all those things happening at once and the coin still surviving and making it into someone's collection are so astronomical that the specimen becomes essentially unique. And unique items in strong demand can command prices that seem to defy logic, but actually make perfect sense when you consider the economics of scarcity and desire. If you're inspired to search for triple strikes yourself, here's what you need to know. Triple strikes are exponentially rarer than double strikes, which are already quite rare, so finding one is definitely a long shot. But they do exist, and they do still turn up occasionally. What you're looking for is a coin where you can clearly see 3 separate impressions of the design overlapping each other. This might appear as multiple Lincoln profiles, multiple dates, or a general muddy appearance, where you can pick out distinct layers of striking if you examine it carefully under magnification. And any coin that appears to have multiple strikes should be protected and authenticated, because even if it's only a double strike, or even if it's in lower grade, it still has significant value. The market for error coins continues to be strong and growing as more people become aware of the hobby. More information becomes available online, more educational content like this video gets produced, and more success stories emerge of people finding valuable coins and changing their lives. And that growing interest means that coins like this 1991 D triple struck broad strike will likely continue to appreciate in value.